It usually happens on a Tuesday or a Thursday, a day that looks exactly like every other day until the phone rings. It's the kind of day where the sun is shining, the coffee tastes normal, and your biggest worry is an email you need to send. And then, in a single devastating heartbeat, the world tilts on its axis. The clock stops, and nothing is normal ever again. Maybe it is the doctor walking into the room, holding a clipboard against his chest, with that specific, non-committal, yet pitying look on his face that tells you everything before he says a word. Maybe it is the sudden, terrifying screech of tires on wet pavement, followed by a silence that is so loud it becomes a physical weight. Maybe it is coming home to find a closet half empty, a key placed deliberately on the counter, and a note that ends a marriage you thought was a permanent vow. The safety you thought you had evaporates. The illusion of control. We all live under the deep-seated belief that if we are kind, if we are careful, if we are good, we will be safe. Shattered. And once the initial shock wears off, once the numbness fades and the adrenaline crashes, it is replaced by a burning, agonizing question that screams in your mind. It is the oldest question in human history. It is the question that has caused kings to weep in their palaces, philosophers to rage in their studies, and average people to abandon their faith altogether. Why? Why me? Why this specific, crushing blow? Why now? And perhaps the most painful variation of all, the one we are afraid to whisper in public, why did God let this happen? If God is truly love, if He is the compassionate, all-powerful Creator, why is there so much suffering? If He is omnipotent, why didn't He stop the car? Why didn't He divert the fire? Why didn't He cure the disease before it took root? If He is the ever-vigilant shepherd, where was He when the wolf came and scattered the flock? We are often told that everything happens for a reason. People say this to be kind, trying to stitch meaning back into a meaningless tragedy. But when you are standing in the wreckage of your own life, holding the pieces of a broken dream, that phrase feels less like comfort and more like a cruel insult. It implies that your suffering is part of a mysterious blueprint that you just aren't smart enough to understand. It suggests that perhaps God needed you to suffer to teach you or others a lesson. It suggests that God is the one inflicting the pain to prove His power to heal it. But what if that's wrong? What if that entire line of thinking is a fundamental lie about God's character? What if the tragedy you are facing right now wasn't sent by God at all? What if the heartbreaking reality of our world, the wars, the sickness, the unfairness, the constant emotional trauma isn't a reflection of God's desire, but a reflection of a cosmic war that began long before we were born? Today, we are going to walk into the dark together. We aren't going to offer you cheap platitudes or simplistic religious slogans. We are going to open the ancient texts to the story of a man who lost absolutely everything: his vast wealth, his esteemed status, his 10 children, and his health in a single, terrible moment. A man named Job. Job didn't suffer because he was wicked. He didn't suffer because he forgot to pray. He suffered because he was the center of a cosmic legal battle, a war over the issue of rulership. That explains the very reason our world is broken today. This story is the key. It is the answer to the why, and understanding it changes everything. It shifts the blame off of God and places it where it belongs. It transforms your suffering from a meaningless tragedy into a stand for the ultimate truth. Stay with me, because the real answer isn't what you've been told, and it might just save your faith. Before we step back into the dusty sands of history, let's stay in the present for a moment longer. We need to validate the authenticity of the pain, because the specific, isolating pain of Job is the pain of us all. It is the universal human condition, magnified and intensified in every generation. There is a specific kind of spiritual loneliness that accompanies innocent suffering. It isn't just sadness, it is the gnawing, cold feeling of abandonment. When you make a genuine effort to live a good life, when you are honest in your dealings, you help your neighbors. You are loyal to your family, and you maintain a habit of prayer. You have an innate, internal expectation of protection. We often treat faith like a transactional contract, even if we are ashamed to admit it out loud. We subconsciously think, I do good, so God gives me good in return. I pay my dues, so I get immunity. When that invisible contract appears to break, we feel deeply betrayed. We feel like we held up our end of the bargain, but heaven failed to deliver. We feel cheated by the universe, and we direct that feeling straight to the Creator. Look at the world around us. Really look at the scale of the injustice. We see innocent children caught in the crossfire of political conflicts in war zones. We see honest, hard-working individuals losing their pensions and their retirement security to corrupt CEOs who buy another yacht while the workers lose their homes. We see devastating natural disasters wiping out entire villages of people who are simply living peaceful lives. We see cancer wards filled with vibrant people who never smoked or drank, their bodies turning against them through no fault of their own. If you possess a heart, this vast and relentless injustice bothers you deeply. In fact, if you didn't feel a righteous anger about this, something would be fundamentally wrong with you. Indifference to suffering is not spiritual maturity. It is the absence of humanity. That anger you feel at injustice, that is not a sign of a lack of faith. That is the image of God within you, screaming for things to be put right. You hate injustice because your Creator hates injustice. Your moral compass is spinning wildly because the moral and physical magnetic field of the world is broken, perverted by a powerful, malevolent force. But here is the paralyzing trap. When we don't understand the source of the suffering, we tend to turn that righteous anger upward. We look at the vast, silent sky and cry out, "You could have stopped this. Why didn't you intervene?" Maybe you are sitting there right now, holding a medical report you didn't deserve, or battling a depression you can't shake. Maybe you are grieving a sudden, brutal loss that has no logical explanation. You feel like you are screaming into a void. You feel like the ceiling is made of impenetrable brass, and your most desperate prayers are bouncing back down unheard. The most dangerous lie that grief whispers to us is that God is indifferent. It tells us that He is too big to care about the specifics of your tiny individual life, or worse, that He is actively cruel, finding pleasure in our anguish. We must resist the insidious suggestion that we are cosmic ants, stepping on each other while God watches from a comfortable distance, unbothered. This is the heavy lifting we must do today. We have to absolutely dismantle the popular idea that God is the author of your pain. We have to shatter the concept that God uses evil as a teaching tool. Because if God is the one inflicting the pain, He is morally culpable. If He is killing children to teach parents about grief, He is not worthy of worship, but He is not. The Bible states clearly, God is love. It defines His very essence. And it also states clearly in James 1:13, when under trial, let no one say, I am being tried by God. For with evil things God cannot be tried, nor does He Himself try anyone. So, if He isn't doing it, who is? And why is He allowing this temporary permission for evil? We must understand the context of the suffering to understand the answer. Let's travel back nearly 3,500 years to the land of Uz, a region likely near the northern part of Arabia. This isn't a vague story. It's a specific historical account of a real man. Job, who lived in the period between the patriarch Joseph and the prophet Moses. Job was, by all accounts, the greatest of all the people of the East. He was far more than just rich. He was a regional powerhouse. Imagine a man who was simultaneously the biggest philanthropist, the most respected judge, and the wealthiest rancher in his entire hemisphere. He was a man of immense temporal and moral authority. His wealth was staggering 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of cattle, and 500 donkeys. But his true wealth, the text insists, was his character. The record describes him as blameless and upright, a man who feared God and shunned what was bad, meaning he possessed a rare moral integrity that was obvious to everyone. He was also a man of deep spiritual care. He was the kind of father who would get up early, following every one of his children's parties, just in case they had sinned in their hearts or misused God's name, offering sacrifices on their behalf. He was deeply, authentically good. He was a man with a protective hedge around him. And then, the scene shifts dramatically. The Bible pulls back the curtain on a dimension we cannot see. We are taken out of the dusty plains of Uz and into the celestial courts of heaven. This is the most critical part of the story, and it is the part most often misunderstood. God draws attention to Job's impeccable loyalty. He is proud of Job's steadfastness. He says effectively, "Have you closely considered my servant Job? There is no one else like him on the earth, a man, blameless and upright." But then, a voice speaks up in opposition. It is Satan. The word Satan means resistor or adversary. He steps forward, in front of the angelic hosts, the sons of God, and throws down a challenge that echoes through eternity. The challenge is not primarily against Job, but against God's right to rule, Satan says. Is it for nothing that Job has feared God? Have you not put up a protective hedge around him and his house and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands. But, for a change, stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to his very face. Stop and listen to the chilling implication of that accusation. Satan is claiming that God cannot be loved for who he is, only for what he gives. He is claiming that God's rulership is flawed because it relies on bribery and coercion. He is arguing that human beings, Yumi, Jabbar, fundamentally selfish. He claims we are nothing more than mercenaries. We only serve God because he pays us with health, comfort, and protection. Satan is saying, take away the money, take away the health, take away the comfort, and this man will spit in your face. No one loves you, God, out of pure devotion. They only love your gifts. This was a direct and devastating challenge to God's integrity, his right to rule. Or sovereignty, and to man's integrity are motives for serving. To settle this legal challenge to prove that humans can love God unconditionally and that God's creation is not flawed, God allowed Satan to test Job. He lifted the hedge of protection. He did not bring the suffering. He simply permitted the enemy to strike. With one condition, he could not kill Job, and strike he did. The speed and violence of the attack were calculated to induce maximum shock. In a single day, 4 messengers arrived, one after another, breathless with horror. First, Sabaean raiders stole the cattle. Next, a fiery storm from the heavens consumed the sheep. Then Chaldean marauders took the camels. And finally, the crushing blow that defies description. Your sons and daughters were eating in their oldest brother's house. A great wind came from the wilderness. The house fell. They are all dead. Job, the greatest man in the East, was now a childless pauper in agony, and he had no idea about the celestial conversation. He didn't know why. He only felt the pain. He was left standing in the ruins of his life with the smoke of his children's home rising in the distance. Imagine the absolute silence after that 4th messenger delivered the news. The wind howling, carrying the scent of smoke and death. The fresh, horrifying knowledge that 10 graves need to be dug simultaneously. The emotional landscape was annihilated. Job falls to the ground. This is the moment where Satan expected him to curse God. This is the moment where, according to the accuser, the mercenary nature of man would be revealed. Job should have shaken his fist at the heavens. He should have screamed, "You betrayed me. I served you faithfully, and this is my reward." But Job does something that completely shatters the logic of the accuser. He shaves his head, he tears his robe. He does not hide his pain. He is not a cold, stoic statue. He grieves deeply, publicly, and authentically. But then, in the lowest moment of his life, he bows down. He worships, and he speaks the words that define the turning point of this cosmic battle, the ultimate evidence against the lie of the accuser. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Let the name of the Lord continue to be praised. Job 1:21. He acknowledges God's fundamental right to rule. He refuses to act as if he owns the blessings. He refuses to let the loss of things or people destroy his deep, abiding relationship with the Creator of things and the Giver of life. He separated the source of the evil Satan from the one who permitted the trial God. But the test wasn't over. Satan returned to God, frustrated and desperate. Skin for skin, he argued. A man will give everything he has for his life, touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. So God allowed the hedge to be lowered further, again with the explicit command that his life be spared. Job was struck with painful, festering boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. He sat in the ashes of his former life, scraping his agonizing skin with a piece of broken pottery. He was unrecognizable, physically hideous, and in profound suffering. His own wife, broken by the double grief of losing her 10 children and seeing her husband in such agonizing condition, finally snapped. She represents the voice of absolute despair that whispers to all of us, she told him. Are you still holding fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. She wasn't necessarily wicked. She just saw the unbearable pain and accepted Satan's premise that a righteous God would never allow this. Therefore, God must have turned against them. Job looks at her and says, "You are talking like one of the senseless women. Shall we accept only what is good from the true God and not accept also what is bad?" In all this, The Bible says Job did not sin with his lips. He proved Satan a liar. He suffered without knowing the reason, yet he maintained his integrity. He proved that a human being can love God even when the blessings are gone, even when the pain seems endless, and even when it seems completely and utterly unfair. This endurance is the great victory. It's the proof we need, and it ties directly into a critical verse written centuries later by the Apostle John, which gives us the full picture of why this happens to us today. It's found in 1 John 5:19. The whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. This is the missing piece of the puzzle. Why do innocent people suffer? Because we are living in a world that is temporarily under the influence of the rebel, the accuser. We are living in a specific, permitted time period where God has allowed a rival sovereignty to function, to settle the ultimate question of rulership. When a building collapses or a disease strikes, it is not God taking your loved one. It is not God testing your limits. It is the result of living in a system that is broken, ruled by an enemy who wants to prove that we will break if we are squeezed hard enough. So we have this incredible ancient story about a man and a cosmic bet. But how does this translate into actionable help for you when you are staring at an eviction notice? How does this deep theology change your daily life when you are receiving chemo or dealing with the constant grinding pressure of an emotional crisis? It changes everything because it shifts the entire paradigm of your suffering from punishment to witness. The old, flawed thinking dictates that if you suffer, God is angry with you. This creates a destructive cycle of guilt and fear. What did I do wrong? People agonize. Is this karma? Is this a judgment for a sin I've forgotten? The philosophy revealed through the story of Job teaches us the universal court case. Imagine a teacher in a classroom full of students. This teacher is wise, ethical, and fully capable. But one clever, highly charismatic, rebellious student stands up and publicly claims the teacher is a fraud. The student claims, "I know a better way to solve the equations. The teacher's rules restrict us. If you follow me, you will be happier and freer." If the teacher just uses his superior power to throw the student out of the class immediately, what happens? The other students might harbor a lingering doubt. They might whisper, maybe the rebel was right. Maybe the teacher is afraid of the truth. Maybe he's a dictator. The teacher's authority would be based on raw power and fear, not proven rightness. So the teacher does the most just thing possible. He steps back. He hands the chalk to the student and says, "Prove it. Show the class your way works." The chaos that follows in the classroom, the wrong answers, the confusion, the fights, the disorder, the suffering is not caused by the teacher. It is caused by the rebel trying to run things and failing spectacularly. The teacher is allowing time for the rebel to demonstrate the destructive nature of his own self-rule, so that once the teacher steps back in, no one, neither students nor angelic observers, will ever question his right to rule again. The issue of sovereignty will be settled forever. We are living in that time of proof. We are in the classroom while the rebel, Satan, is at the chalkboard, and the world is the result of his failed administration. The suffering is the natural consequence of his way, not a divine punishment. This philosophy is profound. It means your suffering is not a judgment from God. It means your enduring integrity has cosmic value. When you keep your faith despite the pain, you are essentially standing up in that cosmic courtroom and giving evidence. You are saying, the rebel is a liar. His way leads to death. I choose the teacher. I choose God, the true sovereign, even when my life is incredibly hard. My loyalty is not for sale. You are not a victim. You are a pivotal witness. This understanding dignifies your struggle. It means your endurance is not wasted. Every morning you wake up and consciously choose hope instead of bitterness, kindness instead of retaliation. You are contributing to the ultimate vindication of truth. You are part of the definitive answer to the great challenge. God isn't testing you to see if you will break. He is confident you won't, and He is allowing you the privilege of proving the accuser wrong. He is cheering for you. He is not the one beating you down. He is the one waiting to restore you. He is the one recording every tear you shed. This perspective takes the helpless sting of "why me?" away. It replaces it with a resolute, dignified "watch me. Watch me remain faithful. Watch me refuse to let this world turn me into a cruel, bitter person." It turns your suffering into a badge of honor in the war for ultimate truth. Let's get intensely practical. How does this massive 3,500-year-old theology survive the piercing sound of the alarm clock on Monday morning? It's easy to talk about cosmic court cases when we are calm and philosophical, but what about when the reality of life hits us in the face, hard and fast? When you wake up with that familiar knot in your stomach, the dread of facing a job you hate, or the cold emptiness of a house that feels too quiet, or the chronic physical pain that greets you before your feet even touch the floor, you have a fundamental, immediate choice to make. Without this understanding, the default choice is usually despair or resentment. You might walk through your day bitter, snapping at people, internally rehearsing the script. Why is the universe punishing me? Why does everyone else have it easier? You become a passive victim of your circumstances. This victimhood consumes you, turning you toxic to yourself and everyone who loves you. But with the job perspective, Monday morning looks radically different. You are not a pawn. You are a combatant. 1. You stop blaming God. When the car breaks down on the way to work, you don't look up and say, "Why are you doing this to me?" You realize, this is a broken world. Entropic decay happens. Things fail. It's not a divine message. This realization releases a massive weight of crippling spiritual anxiety. You are free to simply solve the problem, call the mechanic. Call a tow truck without the debilitating theological baggage. You don't have to wonder if a flat tire is a sign of God's personal disapproval. 2. You find purpose in the pain. When you are in physical pain or facing the emotional distress of betrayal, you can consciously tell yourself, "I am refusing to let this make me bitter. I am refusing to let this turn me into a hateful, withdrawn person. By maintaining my patience, my joy, and my kindness today, I am proving that my spirit is stronger than my circumstances." You treat your patience as a powerful spiritual weapon. Every single time you smile sincerely when you want to scream, every time you choose forgiveness over vengeance, you are defeating the logic of the enemy. Your quiet endurance becomes an eloquent sermon. 3. You become a source of authentic comfort, because you know that God isn't taking people to heaven to be angels, which would be a cruel, abusive act against the living, but rather that death is a temporary enemy that God hates and will destroy. You can comfort others with real, substantive hope. You don't resort to clichés. You don't tell a grieving mother, "God needed your child more than you did." That is a horrific, unloving thing to say. Instead, you weep with her and say, "This is not how it was meant to be." God hates this tragedy too, and He has personally guaranteed a detailed, permanent plan to fix it and reverse the loss. Imagine going to work, knowing that your patient endurance with a difficult boss is actually a profound spiritual victory being recorded. Imagine treating a chronic illness not as a punishment, but as a battleground where you are championing the unconquerable human spirit. It transforms you from a helpless spectator into an active, dignified participant. You aren't just surviving, you are conquering the spirit of the world, as the Apostle Paul, who suffered shipwreck, beatings, and imprisonment, later wrote, "We are coming off completely victorious through Him that loved us." Monday morning becomes a mission field. Your mission? To remain kind, to remain faithful, and to refuse to let the darkness and despair of the world put out your individual light. This perspective gives you a theological shield. When the arrow of suffering hits, it still hurts intensely, but it doesn't poison your soul. You know where it came from, and you know it won't last forever. You walk differently. You are steadier. You are less afraid because you are fighting with purpose. We cannot fully understand the depth of Job's loyalty without exploring the hardest, most humiliating part of his journey. It wasn't the loss of the material wealth. It wasn't even the searing pain of the boils. It was the crushing spiritual cruelty of the comforters. Job had 3 friends: Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Nomathite came to visit him after the tragedy. At first, they were exemplary friends. They sat in agonizing, supportive silence with him for 7 days and 7 nights, recognizing the enormity of his loss. This was their greatest act of true friendship. But then, they opened their mouths, and everything devolved. And what they said was sophisticated, theologically unsound poison. They represented the popular religious thinking of the day, a flawed, simplistic transactional view that unfortunately persists today. Their argument was simple and cruel. God is a machine. Input righteousness, output lavish blessings. Input sin, output devastating suffering. Because Job was suffering more than any man they knew, they concluded he must have committed a secret, terrible sin. Confess, They urged him aggressively. Eliphaz claimed Job was receiving less than his due punishment. Bildad argued that Job's children must have sinned greatly to deserve death. Zophar insisted that God was actually holding back on Job. God is just, they declared repeatedly, so you must be guilty. Are you hiding a secret sin? Did you abuse your wealth? Did you lie to the poor? They didn't just question his theology. They dismantled his reputation, his past, and his character while he was sitting literally in ashes. They used God's name to beat him down, equating his suffering with a divine judgment. They substituted true, loving comfort with judgmental dogma. This was arguably the hardest test of all. It is one thing to suffer natural disasters sent by an unseen enemy. It is another to be attacked and morally gaslit by your friends and religious community. It is agonizing when the people who claim to represent God look at your tears and tell you that you deserve them. Obedience felt impossible for Job here. It would have been so easy to give up on God, seeing how his followers were treating him. It would have been easy to say, if this is what believing in God leads to judgmental friends, twisted theology, and endless pain, he could have become a bitter, angry cynic, forever poisoned against kindness. But Job was obedient to truth, not just to peer pressure or flawed human theology. He vehemently defended God's justice, but also defended his own integrity. He knew he hadn't sinned in a way that warranted this punishment. He refused to confess to secret sins just to make their theology fit the facts. He cried out, "Until I expire, I shall not take away my integrity from me. I will hold fast to my righteousness and not let it go." Job 27:2-5-6. There will be times in your life when obedience feels absolutely impossible, when doing the right thing seems to bring no immediate reward, when you are honest at work and get passed over for a promotion by someone who cheats, when you forgive someone and they hurt you again, when you pray and hear only silence, when the people you trusted most abandon you. In those moments, you are standing exactly where Job stood. The pressure to give in, to cheat, to hate, to seek revenge, to abandon your faith will be immense. The world will tell you, just give up. It's not worth the fight. But remember, the test isn't about whether things go well for you right now. The test is whether you will hold on to what is right, regardless of the immediate outcome. Job didn't know the end of the story. He didn't know he would get everything back. He obeyed in the dark, based solely on his confidence in God's ultimate goodness. And that is the most powerful kind of faith there is. Faith that demands a guarantee is a transactional bargain. Faith that trusts in the dark is pure love and loyalty. Job's refusal to agree with his friends, his refusal to let them define his relationship with God, is a powerful lesson in spiritual independence. You know your heart. God knows your heart. Don't let the noise of the crowd shake your foundation. Stand firm. Finally, after the accusations, after the confusion, after the excruciating long-suffering pain, the storm broke. Job had endured, and the legal case in heaven was settled. The accuser, Satan, was proved a liar by the sheer unbreakable loyalty of a suffering human. God answered Job, but he didn't answer the way Job or Y might expect. He did not issue a blanket apology. He did not immediately explain the cosmic bet with Satan. He did not give a neat, concise theological dissertation on the origin of evil. He answered with a profound, earth-shattering perspective shift. Speaking out of a great, majestic windstorm, God asked Job a series of rhetorical questions that recalibrated Job's entire existence, forcing him to confront the limits of his own knowledge and wisdom. Where were you when I founded the earth? Who barricaded the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you ever commanded the morning? Can you tie the ropes of the Kima constellation? Do you give the horse its might? God essentially took Job on a majestic, awe-inspiring tour of the universe. He showed him the snow storehouses, the hidden paths of light, the complex lives of the mountain goats, the terrifying, magnificent wildness of the ostrich, the strength of the warhorse, and the sheer power of the colossal creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan. God reminded Job of the incomprehensible vastness of creation and the complexity of its design. He reminded Job that the human perspective Evan, the perspective of the greatest man in the East, is tiny compared to the universal reality. Job realized that he didn't need to know the why of every tragedy. He just needed to be fully confident in the Hu, the Creator, the Sustainer, the one whose power and love were limitless. Job humbled himself. He saw God not as a distant, punitive judge, but as the majestic, awe-inspiring sovereign who holds the entire universe together with effortless skill. He realized that if God cares for the raven and the mountain goat, surely he was watching Job. Job's response was profound. "I know that you can do all things, and that nothing you have in mind is unattainable. I talked about things I did not understand. Therefore, I take back what I said, and I repent in dust and ashes." The breakthrough was Job's repentance, not for a sin he committed, but for his limited, human-centric view of God. And then came the restoration. Once the legal case was settled, once Job had proved his incorruptible love, the trial ended. The teacher stepped back into the classroom and dealt with the accuser. The Bible says, "The Lord restored Job's prosperity and multiplied all that Job had by 2. The Lord gave Job double what he had before." This is the glorious outcome. His brothers and sisters returned. He was blessed with 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of cattle. But most importantly, he was blessed with a new family, 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. The account specifically mentions that his daughters Jemima, Kaziah, and Karan-Hapuch were renowned as the most beautiful women in all the land, a sign of their incredible worth. Job lived another 140 years. He saw his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. He died old and satisfied with days. This restoration is not just a happy ending for an individual. It is a prophecy and a guarantee for all of us. The book of James says, "You have heard of the endurance of Job and have seen the outcome Jehovah gave." That Jehovah is very tender in affection and merciful, James 5:11. The outcome is the guarantee for us. The suffering we see now is temporary. The final, eternal restoration is permanent. Just as Job received back everything he lost, the Bible promises a time when God will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Revelation 21:4. It promises a resurrection of the dead. Those children Job lost, he will see them again in the resurrection. The innocent people who have suffered and died in our world. They are in God's perfect memory, safe, awaiting a wake-up call into a healed world. The injustice, it will be undone. The pain, it will be forgotten, replaced by the exquisite delight of everlasting peace. The real answer to suffering is not that suffering is good, it is that suffering is short-lived, and the restoration will be far greater than the loss. So, where does this monumental history and theology leave us? We have the ancient record of endurance, the profound philosophy of the cosmic court case, and the stunning promise of a future restoration. But we still have to navigate the often brutal reality of today. We still have to get through the next hour, the next day, the rest of this painful week. You might be in the middle of your own book of Job right now. You might be in chapter 2, where the pain is fresh and debilitatingly raw. Or you might be in chapter 7, where the voices of accusation and despair are surrounding you, and the silence of God feels like abandonment. Your one obedient step today is not to fix everything. You can't fix the world. You can't even fix your own past. You don't need to summon the strength to run a spiritual marathon. Your necessary defining step is simply to hold fast. Hold fast to your integrity. Hold fast to your confidence in God's ultimate goodness. What does this crucial act of holding fast look like practically? 1. Be brutally honest with God. Job didn't pretend to be cheerful. He wasn't afraid to confront God with his pain. He poured out his heart, asking hard, desperate questions. Go somewhere quiet today. Cry if you need to. Scream if you need to. Tell God exactly how much it hurts, how unfair it feels, and how close you are to giving up. He can handle your raw, honest emotion. He prefers an honest wrestle to a fake, stoic submission. True prayer is not about telling God what you think He wants to hear. It is about bringing Him the unvarnished reality of your heart. 2. Do the next right thing. Just one thing. Don't look at the whole mountain of despair. Just look at your feet. Find the smallest, most manageable act of order and goodness. Maybe it's washing a single dish. Maybe it's making that necessary phone call you've been dreading. Maybe it's simply getting out of bed and brushing your teeth, or drinking a glass of water. Do this small act as an act of defiance against the crushing chaos and darkness that seeks to paralyze you. Every small act of moral or physical order is a rebellion against the enemy's chaotic influence. 3. Refuse to curse, settle, or surrender. This is the big one. Refuse to let the bitterness take root in your soul. When the thought comes, God doesn't care, or it's not fair, or I'm giving up. Immediately replace it with the resolute truth. God is allowing this time to settle the issue, but He is with me, and He will restore me. Don't let the pain turn you into a victim defined by your suffering. Don't settle for the easy, bitter path. There is a powerful and accurate saying: the devil can do nothing to a man who has nothing to lose but his integrity. If you decide that your relationship with God, your integrity, your loyalty, your core belief in right and wrong is the one thing you will never sell, you become spiritually invincible. The job can go, the money can go, the health can go, but if you hold on to your integrity, you have kept the most valuable thing in the universe. You have won the universal court case. You are not alone in this fight. A great cloud of witnesses has gone before you. Job is cheering you on from history. He is saying, I made it through the worst, and you can too. And more importantly, God is watching, not to judge you, but to support you with limitless love and compassion. Take that one step, trust that the teacher is in perfect control of the classroom, even if the rebellious student is making a temporary, destructive mess right now. The bell is about to ring. The lesson is almost over. The restoration is closer than you think. Let's close our time together with a moment of focused, powerful prayer. I want to pray for you, not a generic prayer, but a specific prayer for the jobs watching this right now. For the ones who are hurting in secret, holding on to their integrity in the face of impossible pressure. Creator, Sovereign Lord of the universe, we come to you acknowledging the immensity of our pain and the limits of our understanding. We see the injustice in the world, and it breaks our hearts just as it breaks yours. But we thank you for the ancient, powerful record of Job. Thank you for pulling back the curtain and showing us that our suffering is not a sign of your anger, but a battleground where we can prove our pure, selfless love for you, thus vindicating your name. We pray specifically for the person watching this who feels like giving up. Give them the supernatural courage to take one more step today. Help them to shut out the corrosive voices of accusation, doubt, and despair. Help them to see past the immediate storm to the magnificent restoration that is absolutely guaranteed to come. Remind them that they are pivotal witnesses in your great universal case. Give us all the fortitude to be beacons of your love and hope in a world that needs it so desperately. We stand firm in the certainty that you will call, and every one of the dead will answer. We await that moment, the ultimate victory over death and injustice. In the name of the one who conquered the world, Amen. If this powerful message resonated with you, if you felt a distinct shift in your spirit from helpless victim to dignified witness, then you are part of this worldwide community. We are not just a video channel. We are building a place here at Faith Burst for people who demand deep answers, not just surface-level, comforting clichés. We believe that knowing the truth historically, logically, biblically is what sets you free from fear and allows you to find purpose in your pain. Do me a favor. In the comments section below, I want you to write one word, and only one word, restoration. Write it as a declaration that you believe the end of your story will be infinitely better than the beginning. Write it to remind yourself, in print, that the current pain is not the final, definitive chapter of your life. Write it to tell the algorithm and the accuser that hope and truth are trending and will ultimately prevail. And if you know someone who is suffering right now, someone who is paralyzed by the question, why me? Share this video with them immediately. You might just give them the key to surviving their storm and finding the purpose in their trial. We are in this together. We are holding fast together. We are waiting for the whirlwind to stop and the blessing to begin. This is Faith Burst, short enough to watch, strong enough to change your life. Until tomorrow, stand firm.